Hello, lovelies, and welcome back to Seriously Now. I'm Lex Carline, and I hope you're having a wonderful week so far. Well, the summer holidays are officially underway. How's everybody coping? Anybody pulled their hair out yet? No? Good. We will get through this together. Well, this week my child wanted to join our local library, which is a really good thing. And so off we went. I've not been for years, which is really bad, but realised with podcasting might actually be a really helpful tool. Not everything has to be done online. And we're going to take part in the summer reading challenge, so hopefully we're going to get some certificates too, because who doesn't love a certificate? Now today we're going to be delving into the world of creepy castles, their dark histories, hauntings, and maybe even gateways to other places. So let's dive in, shall we? Now the first one today, and we're going to be talking about two, is one that is very, very close to my heart. It's tucked away in a deep wooded valley in the beautiful South Devon countryside, and it's called Berry Pomeroy Castle. Said to be one of the most haunted places in the British Isles, the once magnificent castle has sadly, and as is so often the case, been reduced to a romantic ruin. Oh, how I would have loved to roam when it was in its full glory. Now, the land the castle was originally built on was granted to Ralph de Pomeroy, a Norman knight, by King William I, also known as William the Conqueror, and he was the first Norman king of England, sometimes called William the Bastard, but he's an entirely different episode. Ralph was one of the 52 Devon Domesday Book tenants-in-chief of the king and the first feudal baron of Berry Pomeroy. He participated in the Norman conquest of England in 1066, and in total he was rewarded with 58 manors or other holdings in Devon and 2 manors in Somerset. Not a bad prize. He was also one of 2 commissioners appointed to carry the tax collected in Devon from the assessments in the Domesday Book survey. So, woo, taxman. Now, Ralph decided against building a fortress. For reasons we have no idea, but instead he built an unfortified manor house where the family would live for the next 400 years. He died before the year 1100, leaving behind several sons, and the eldest was William de la Pomeroy. Notice the slight name change? By the late 1400s, the Pomeroy family began to build the castle that we know today, and it's thought that this was because there was trouble brewing in the area, with Devon being the most lawless area of southern England at the time. And that trouble would later become the War of the Roses, in which the Pomeroys were involved on the Yorkist side. So Devon was a very, very dangerous place in those days. Let me know if you'd like me to cover the War of the Roses in a future episode, or, anything else you'd like me to cover. So exactly when the construction started is unknown. The castle's founder might have been Henry Pomeroy, who owned Berry Pomeroy from 1461 to 1487, but it was more likely his heir, Sir Richard Pomeroy, and made even more likely by the similar, broadly speaking, artillery defences being constructed at Dartmouth Castle, which is not too far from Berry Pomeroy. Jake, you okay? Dog's just doing some sneezing. But the castle itself first appears in the records when Sir Richard died in 1496 as the owner of the Honour, Castle and Manor of Bury. But archaeology has established it was built on previously unused land within an existing deer park. So the castle would remain in the hands of the Pomeroy family until December 1547, when the impoverished Sir Thomas Pomeroy was bought out by the wealthy and powerful Duke of Somerset, Edward Seymour. Yes, that Seymour family. Edward was in fact the brother of Henry VIII's favourite wife, divorced, beheaded, died, Jane Seymour. And also in 1547, Edward became Lord Protector of his 9-year-old nephew, King Edward VI, and so was effectively the ruler of England. And the fan on my computer, which has been quiet all day, has just decided to start going again. Sorry, guys. Me and technology. Now, Edward Seymour gathered many properties during his rise in power, and the Berry Pomeroy estate was his most valuable single acquisition. He had a reputation as the patron of ambitious mansions, and it did give rise to the unfounded belief that he undertook extensive building works at Berry Pomeroy. Although Edward may never have even visited the site, his ownership was very short-lived, as he was imprisoned in October 1551 by the Earl of Warwick, John Dudley, on a trumped-up charge of treason, and he was then executed in January 1552. Now, the Seymour family biographer states that the first of this honourable family to settle in Devon was Edward's eldest surviving son from his first marriage, also named Edward, although this was after a lengthy legal battle with some of his half-siblings. And it was this Lord Seymour that built the Elizabethan courtyard house. Although the Pomeroy fortress remains imposing, the medieval buildings were swept away during a 4-storey courtyard house or mansion's construction. The views from the top must have been absolutely breathtaking, because it is such a beautiful, beautiful place. If you ever get a chance to go when you're in Devon, or South Devon particularly, because Devon's quite a big place by UK standards, highly recommended. Now, here's a bit of scandal for you. Because there were doubts about the legitimacy of his link to the Seymour family, lots of speculation that his mother Catherine was unfaithful, his father disinherited his eldest son John, who died shortly after his father's death, and Edward, with the bulk of the estate going to the second family he had with Anne Stanhope. Now, they're sometimes referred to as the senior Seymours and the junior Seymours, with the senior or Berry Pomeroy branch continuing their inheritance dispute for generations. I can't say I blame them. Families, hey? Wonderful. Well, they can be really wonderful. They can also be shit. By 1590, an east range had been added to the estate, and although it was modest in size compared to others, it was advanced for the time. It was compact, tall, with 2 complete floors of accommodation above the 2 lower floors with the main hall and services. Now, during the first decade of the 1600s, work was underway on transforming the mansion into a palatial stately home to rival others such as Longleat. Awesome safari park if you ever get the chance to go, or I'm sure some of you may have been. Now, this project would include replacing the house's north range by a grand staircase and galleries, which led to luxurious new rooms in the east range, and also the raising of a stupendous, what a word, new north wing, 3 stories high. Now, we're unsure why he wanted to undertake these works on what's deemed a cramped and unstable site, but, as is often the case when schemes are grand, and the funds quickly ran out. Dun dun dun. And so the building work stopped. By June of 1611, and in serious financial trouble, Edward purchased a baronetcy to become the first baronet of Berry Pomeroy. A baronet means a member of the lowest hereditary title British order, so basically a commoner who could use the title Sir. How pompous, if you ask me. Sir Edward died in April 1613. The great house was unfinished at the time, and sadly, it would never ever be completed. The family was said to retreat into an updated version of the old Elizabethan mansion. Now, Sir Edward Seymour V, yes, lots of Edwards, but then that was the way back then, wasn't it? Named after your father. And he was also known as Speaker Seymour, had quarrelled bitterly with his parents during his younger years, and due to his political career, he was far more interested in being in London. So, he ordered the demolition of Berry Pomeroy Castle. Decorated stonework was removed, as were whole timber beams. Flagstone floors were lifted out, tiles were taken off the roof, the glass was removed from the windows with the leading being melted down. And in 1697, a man named John Prince said, now demolished and buried in its own ruins, there being nothing standing but a few broken walls. How sad is that? And whilst the ruins are often referred to as picturesque, it's a real bloody shame. Between 1980 and 1996, the area was subjected to a lot of archaeological excavations, which is how we have learned that the castle wasn't built until hundreds of years after the land was acquired. And Berry Pomeroy Castle is still owned by the present 19th Duke of Somerset, John Seymour, a direct descendant of the Seymours. Funnily enough with that name. It is now a Grade 2 listed building and is looked after by the English Heritage, so it's nice and protected, which is good news. And although the castle lies in ruins, it is said to be home to a variety of ghosts, with some visitors even claiming to have captured them on camera. Many visitors have been known to sneak into the castle grounds after dark. No comment. But seriously, Trespassing, not a good idea, and I do not recommend it. It's been a few years since I've been there, so I'm not sure if it's even possible anymore, but please don't try it. So, some of the less popular ghosts include guards, an older woman standing in front of St. Margaret's Tower, footprints forming in the gravel with no obvious source, which would be kind of cool, and even shaking gates. And then there's Isabel, or Isabella, and she is the ghost child who is said to roam the ruins. But what's unusual about her is that she is actually able to leave the confines of the castle and has been reported to follow people home who have upset her before she returns. So yeah, attachments aren't fun. If you've ever had one, you will know what I'm talking about. Part of me wonders if she's actually a ghost or whether she's something more sinister. Because after all, demons and evil things are said to take the form of children to allow their targets to be easily fooled. You know, sweet, harmless, innocent little girl. There have also been reports of the sighting of two young brothers in full armour, and they are thought to have ridden their horses up to the top of the castle ramparts, which is a defensive wall with a broad top and walkway, you know, where you'd see the soldiers patrolling and stuff, and together jumped to their deaths, which is bloody awful. Wonder why. But two of the most famous Berry Pomeroy ghosts are the White and Blue Ladies. The White Lady is said to be the restless soul of Margaret Pomeroy, and this story is also tragic. It's said that she was imprisoned in the dungeons by her sister, Eleanor. Eleanor was said to be extremely jealous of her sister's beauty, and she wanted to keep Margaret away from any potential husband. Like, really? Some serious sibling rivalry. Poor Margaret ended up starving to death and has haunted the dungeons ever since. Her presence is said to be accompanied by feelings of sadness, depression, and uneasiness. Bless her. Now, the Blue Lady, on the other hand, is said to be the one to watch out for, especially if you're male. She was first reported in the 1700s and is said to beckon passers-by into her tower. Once they've seen the Blue Lady and she's beckoned them over, the person is then said to get lost in the castle. And this can be particularly perilous, with one person taking a wrong turn and actually falling out of the tower window. Ouch. She was believed to have been the daughter of one of the Norman castle lords. And she was also said to have been, essay trigger warning here, raped by her father and fallen pregnant with his baby. Poor girl. The tales say that her father then strangled the baby in one of the rooms of the castle, although some have insinuated that it was actually she who murdered the child, and that she wanders the dungeons mourning the loss of her infant. She became the death portent, a sign or warning of an impending death, to the Seymour family, interestingly enough. So, if you're in Berry Pomeroy Castle and you see the Blue Lady, I would say stay away. And although short and sweet, that's the tale of Berry Pomeroy Castle. So, for our second castle today, we're heading over to the Czech Republic, where deep in the forests near Lake Mashovo, yeah, we know I'm going to butcher it, it's a foreign name, I'm sorry, I tried, in central Bohemia, and there lies a Gothic fortress with a history including ghosts, monsters, demons, rumours of Nazis conducting gruesome experiments, and even a gateway to hell. Now, as we heard last week in The Dark Side of Fairies, some entrances to the otherworld were labelled as gateways to hell by the Christian Church. But this second castle we're talking about today is believed to serve as a fortified prison to contain evil entities from escaping the gateway. It's built atop a rocky cliff in an extremely isolated location. This is the tale of Houska Castle. Now, Bohemian chronicler Václav Hašek, in his Czech chronicle in 1541, stated that the first known structure at the site of the castle was a wooden fort in the 9th century, although the limestone cliffs were said to have drawn people since ancient times. He also recounted that local folklore spoke of a crack emerging in the cliff, which the villagers deemed an endless abyss and an entrance to hell. Then we jump to the turn of the 13th century, so, just a minute ago, and the locals were reporting strange things happening in the dense Houska forests, more specifically a bottomless pit with winged monsters, demons, ghosts, and a headless horse creeping out of the depths. There were even claims of bizarre human hybrids, such as a man with the head of a bullfrog. The locals believed it was a gateway to hell because of the demonic beings that were emerging to feed on the villagers and drag them back to hell, never to be seen again, as well as tearing apart livestock. And the legends say that in order to dispel the rumours of any evil occurrences, a local duke offered local prisoners, who were facing the gallows, a full pardon if they agreed to be lowered into the hole and report on what they saw. Would you undertake the challenge if you were one of those prisoners? Maybe, maybe not after you hear this. So the first prisoner to undertake the challenge was a young man who was said to be in good health. And it wasn't long after he was lowered down that he started screaming, a blood-curdling scream. When they pulled him back up, not only was he a gibbering wreck, but to everyone's terrified amazement, he'd aged decades. Now, sources varied between 30 to 40 years, and it's said that when he came out, his hair had turned as white as snow, his face was all wrinkled and old, and just, yeah, baffling. Now, one source said that the now not-so-young man died 2 days later, and another said that although he lived, he was so traumatised by what he'd seen that he was committed to an asylum. So either way, wasn't a good turnout for the young man, was it? I wonder what he saw. It's said, unsurprisingly, that very few prisoners chose to follow him into the pit, choosing death instead, which is very telling. Now remember, at that time people were extremely religious, and that may have played a factor in their decisions, and also the hysteria around the abyss. So the Duke, who was under the orders of King Ottokar II, took action. And that action was to build Houska Castle directly over the pit, believing it would block the entrance to whatever lay below. Now the official website states that the castle was built as a hub for the king, but local folklore maintains it was to contain the gap. And this may help to explain why it was built in such a remote location, miles from the nearest town, trade route, or even water source. It had a simple cistern to collect rainwater. Now, Houska Castle was built somewhere between 1253 and 1278, and the odd way in which it was constructed really lends to the legend of the Hell Entrance. Now, originally nobody lived there, which is kind of good, as there were no stairs from the courtyard to the upper floors, no kitchen, slightly important, fake windows, and oddly, most of the castle's defences were built facing inwards. And, this is bizarre because defences are usually built to keep people out, like invaders. No, you can't come in, not for you. But this is kind of as if they were trying to keep something in. And this still baffles visitors to this day. If we've never had an official explanation other than hell beasts. I mean, hell beasts is a bloody good reason, but yeah, you get what I mean. Now, locals had tried for years to block this gap up with stones and other debris, just chucking whatever they could in there, believing that the gap was actually refusing to be filled. So the king himself had it sealed with stone plates over the top, and for good measure, believing the best defence against the darkness beneath was religion. A chapel was built directly above it. And this chapel was dedicated to the This chapel was dedicated to the Archangel Michael, who was said to lead God's armies against Lucifer's fallen angels, with images of him fighting a dragon and weighing the souls of the dead on Judgment Day. I'm kind of intrigued by the artwork. But this wasn't any ordinary chapel, because inside it contained references to both paganism and Satan. And in the time where being left-handed was considered a sign of the devil, my nana was left-handed when she was little and she was forced to use her right hand. There was actually a painting of a left-handed centaur woman shooting her arrow with the left hand, is how we know, and historians believe that this painting is a hint at the creatures lurking beneath. Now, it's said that the ghost of a black-clad monk is there guarding the entrance to the pit. Can't be too careful just in case it is a gateway to hell, so even the ghosts are helping out. And another local legend, and I quite like this one, is that by 1639 the castle was occupied? What is wrong with me today? Was occupied by Oronto, a Swedish black magic practitioner. See, words are hard. Yes, a Swedish black magic practitioner. There we go. Oronto was said to toil away in his laboratory every night, attempting to create an elixir for eternal life with unhinged experiments. I mean, he clearly failed, but thoughts on eternal life? Not sure. Maybe if I stopped aging, rather than aging for eternity. But then, what if there's something after this that we're missing out on? What if this is just the beginning and, whatever we move on to next is effectively leveling up? Who knows? But I'd love to find out, just not too soon. Anyway, Oronto's antics terrified the villagers, because of course they did. We're also in witch times. And unfortunately for Oronto, one night 2 local hunters broke into the castle and murdered him in his lab. But despite Oronto's death, locals continued to avoid the area. Now, scholars have stated holes in what they call Oronto's dubious existence, but then dark magic to create an elixir of life is probably something that people would want swept under the rug anyway, isn't it? And whilst the castle was renovated in the 1580s to give it Renaissance-style modifications, which were very popular at the time, after Oronto may or may not have been there, the castle actually lay abandoned and fell into disrepair in the 1700s. Maybe the alleged gateway to hell put people off living there. I can't imagine why. Would you want to live there? I mean, I'd give it a go. But I'm weird, and I own it. But the good news is that the castle was actually restored by 1823. And Princess Hohenlohe bought the castle in 1897, but I couldn't find much information on her. Now, Joseph Simonek, who was the first president of Skoda Works, which is the predecessor company to the ones we know today as Skoda Auto, Doosan Skoda Power and Skoda Transportation, bought the castle in 1924. But in the Second World War, Houska Castle was commandeered by the Nazi Party, and there was speculation that they wanted to harness the castle's demonic power for themselves. Nazis and demonic power? Surely not. Now, given the castle's lack of external defences and the fact that it's around 30 miles from Prague, other than the castle's demonic activity, their reasoning for selecting this location may also have been to secure the 13,000 manuscript library of SS leader Heinrich Himmler, fearing, naturally, that they would all be destroyed in the war. Himmler was obsessed with the occult, believing its power would ultimately help the Nazis rule the world. Got that one wrong, didn't you, mate? Thankfully. Now, locals at the time of Houska's Nazi occupation did report strange lights and horrifying sounds. Now, it was also rumoured that not only Himmler, but many top Nazi officials attended dark ceremonies in attempts to harness the power of hell. Whether or not that was the case, what is known is that the Nazis were certainly conducting experiments. We just don't know if they were occult in nature. There were also rumours that they were trying to create and breed super soldiers. Don't you just love a good rumour when it's not about you? Unfortunately, and coincidentally, we will probably never know what they really got up to there, as all the records have either been lost or destroyed. And then after the war, Houska Castle was returned to the Simonek family, who still own it to this day. In 1999, the family decided to open the castle as a tourist attraction. Visitors and locals still claim to see ghosts wandering the grounds and the corridors. There's a white lady in mourning in a window. There's always a white lady, isn't there? There's a white lady in my hometown, back in England. There's white ladies everywhere. Where are we? Yes, white lady. And then there's a demon hound that dissipates, leaving a foul stench when approached. Nice. So if you do go and visit the castle and you see a demon hound, don't go near it. Never mind the fact that it's a demon hound. Stinky. Don't need that. Now, there have even been reports by visitors of sightings of flying human bat-like creatures. Remember the hybrids from earlier on with the frog head? And also nocturnal humanoid type things running in packs, or flying for the bats, around the vicinity of the castle. Hysteria? Or real? What do you think? Visitors and locals also claim to hear screaming and scratching from the castle at night, as if the creatures inside are trying to get out. So maybe it's a good thing that it's not the easiest place to visit. Although I'm definitely going. Are you? Yeah, definitely on my bucket list now. If you made it to the end, thank you. As always, you know I'm grateful for you because I wouldn't be here without you. So let's continue to build this Seriously Now family. I love you all. We are all under the umbrella. Happy family. We are family. As always, you can find me on the socials at Seriously Now Pod. Our email and PayPal address are seriouslynowpod@gmail.com. And you can email me your content request ideas, any Seriously You stories of the weird and wonderful that you have that maybe I'll do a segment on at some point if we get enough. Please write in. Or if you just want to say hi. Hi. So next week, we are going to dip our toe back into the true crime world, and we're going to go over to Australia, if only literally, to discuss a woman they call the female Hannibal Lecter, Catherine Knight. Now, it's a doozy. That one is a doozy, and as the girls on Morbid say, if you haven't checked out Morbid Podcast, go and do it because they're amazing. We're going to need to hold on to our butts. So on that note, lovelies, I hope you have a good rest of your week, and we will summer holiday check in again next week. So until then, stay safe, stay free, and stay weird. Bye-bye.